notebooks or things to write down for talking about Exodus. Okay, we've got some notes here on the board that we'll talk about in the remaining time that we have. And keep in mind that as we're talking about this stuff in class, getting these notes on the board or PowerPoints or readings or just different assignments that we do, all of those things would be contributing to writing a paper like this. Okay, so the stuff that we've talked about in Genesis or Exodus, as you guys are writing that down, the assignments that you complete, the readings that we do, you can use those things later to help you write your paper summarizing the book. Okay, does that make sense? So the stuff's all connected. Yeah.
Can I start from that hash?
What's that? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so let's talk about Exodus. Unfortunately, we can't talk about, everything that's here.
Bless you. Wow. Bless you.
All right, yes.
Can I go back in the webinars?
Yeah.
There's tissues in the library.
Okay, guys, let's focus. Got a limited amount of time here. Okay, so we left off, and a great project for you guys, if we get there soon, is you could take the 10 plagues as another great project topic and talk about this plague deals with this Egyptian god. This plague deals with this Egyptian god. That would be a really helpful thing to have, or a cool idea to go over and to research and learn about. So you could do like a project on Moses. You could do a project on the Mosaic covenant. You could do a project on the 10 plagues or the 10 commandments. Okay, we haven't assigned a project yet, but I'm just saying, like, once we get there and you kind of put together that research, that might be kind of a cool topic. But anyway, so the last plague is what? What's the final plague? Kind of the big one. Yeah, Patrick.
Death of the very firstborn?
Death of the firstborn, yes. Okay, now it's a reversal from Exodus 1, where Pharaoh is trying to kill Israel's firstborn. Okay, and then God calls Israel in Exodus 4:22 and 23 his firstborn. So he says, Israel is my son, my firstborn. He says, if you do not let him go, I will kill your firstborn. And that's eventually what happens. Now, how is Israel protected from this judgment? Because they have to do something here. Yeah. Lamb blood, yeah. The Passover lamb, the Passover instructions, they sacrifice the lamb, they eat the lamb, and they put the blood on the doorpost, the lintels, so that the angel of death will pass over them. So the sacrifice hides them, shields them from the wrath and judgment of God, right? So now we're starting to see this development of concepts. Jesus will later be called by Paul the Passover Lamb, will be called by John the Baptist the Lamb of God. Okay, so this concept is huge. And then we also see that it's this event, the Passover and the final judgment of the 10th plague, that produces the Exodus. This is where God is fulfilling an aspect of the Abrahamic covenant to create a nation for himself. They're not a nation yet until God brings them out and gives them his covenant. Okay? So they exit. There is the crossing of the Red Sea, the splitting of the Red Sea, where Pharaoh follows him and he and his armies are destroyed. They sing a song of praise in Exodus 15. Exodus 16 through 18, though, they rebel against Moses. They rebel against God. They complain. For serious reasons, they are missing water. But instead of trusting God, instead of requesting stuff from God, they start to question God's character and start to ask whether or not they should really go back to Egypt. Are they really better off with God? Okay, so now there's this hint of, Israel, things are not going to go well for a sinful people with a holy God. Okay, so they go to the Mount Sinai, And this is where they meet God, and God gives them his covenant. And this is another important biblical covenant, Exodus 19, 1 through 6. It's reiterated a bunch of times other places. So we've had the Abrahamic covenant, we've had the Noahic covenant, but now we have the Mosaic covenant. And this one's going to be a little bit different because this one is going to have requirements for the people who are in the covenant to keep it. The Abrahamic covenant is unilateral on behalf of God. Only God fulfills it. Noahic covenant, only God fulfills it. We don't have to do anything to keep the Noahic covenant. Abraham didn't have to do anything to keep the Abrahamic covenant either, right? It was going to be beyond him. So that's why he has to just trust God. Okay? This covenant is going to be different because it's going to be a law covenant. It's a covenant with rules, laws, stipulations that if you break this, in our language we would call it it's stronger than this as a covenant, but if you break this contract, the covenant has certain consequences. If you keep the contract, the covenant has certain positive consequences. Okay? But let me read Exodus 19, 1 through 6. It says, in the third month after the sons had gone out from the land of Egypt, let me just pause there to make a note about the time. Within 3 months, they've already had Exodus 16 and 17 where they're testing God. Okay, so it's a short amount of time that's taken place. But he said, left the land of Egypt. On that very day, they came to the wilderness of Sinai. When they set out from Rephidim, they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and they camped in the wilderness. And there Israel camped in front of the mountain. Moses went up to God, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain and said, thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the sons of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my covenant and obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel. Okay, so God introduces himself. They've seen God in the pillar of cloud, the pillar of fire. They've seen God in the plagues. God's spoken to them through Moses. He's promised the Exodus. This has now happened, and now he's brought them here, and now he says, okay, I'm taking over now as king. You're my people. Here is the covenant that I'm presenting before you, the agreement. Okay? He offers for them to be a couple of things. His own special possession or special nation, right? Remember, God promised Abraham that he would become what in his family? Not just individuals, but Abraham would become what?
Oh, many nations.
A nation, yeah, many nations. And that ultimately God is going to have his nation to make that international impact. So here's where that's happening. Here's where Israel is really created as a nation. He says, you'll be my own special possession. You'll be my own treasure among the nations. Okay, God's chosen people. Okay? And he tells them, you will be my kingdom of priests. So we have the idea of kingdom returning. Adam lost in the creation mandate, or not lost, but forfeited in the creation mandate his right and ability to rule on behalf of God in creation as God's appointed king over creation. Well, now Israel is going to be a kingdom. Now, for a while, besides God, they're not going to have a king. Okay? So God's going to be representative of their king. Okay, so there'll be a kingdom but of priests, meaning they're supposed to have this role to the rest of the nations, that the nations are supposed to see them keeping God's law, God's wisdom, God's promises to them, the blessings that they'll have from keeping the law, and that will cause the other nations to want to come to them, know who God is, and give them the opportunity to teach about who God is, and for other nations to come to God through this kingdom of priests. and then they'd be a holy nation set apart for God, that uniquely acts as God's son and God's servant in the world. Okay? Now, this covenant is conditional. What does it mean if something has conditions or is conditional? Yeah, Patrick?
It can something can only happen if another thing happens.
Right. Something can only happen if another thing happens. So like Mrs. Lawson came in and talked about dress code for some of these upcoming events. Those are conditions. You can participate in the events if you keep the conditions, right? Or you sign something, terms and conditions, right? That if these things are true, then these things are true. So that's why there's an if-then statement. So they're going to have to, this is not for salvation, okay? This is for their role as a nation and the blessings that come with that. They're going to have to obey God to get this. Now this is going to be how the Abrahamic covenant is administrated through the Mosaic covenant, okay? So they're going to, if they keep these things, this will be the result. If they don't keep these things, then the result will be negative consequences. Okay, so focus in on the covenant structure. Okay, so God accommodates the people and gives them this covenant in a way that they will understand. In the ancient Near East during this time, if a king took over an area, like won a battle and in that battle got this new region or territory that had these people living in it, he would send out an announcement of his victory, and he would say, okay, here, you are now my people. Here is the covenant agreement I'm going to make with you. Here's our history together. Here's who I am. And here's what I expect from you. Now, if you obey these laws, I'll be good to you, and you'll get these benefits. If you disobey these laws, I will bring on you consequences, negatively, curses, and you will get these punishments. Okay, and so God presents His covenant with the people this way as well, where He gives them a preamble, saying, "Okay, this is who I am. This is what has been done. History of here's our history together of what I've done for you, how I came to Abraham, how I delivered you from Egypt, bore you on eagle's wings, brought you to myself." And then he says, if you keep my commandments, right? Then he gives the stipulations of the covenant. That means he gives the rules, the commands, okay? And if you keep the commands, you get what? According to the law.
Blessing.
Blessing, okay? Like Genesis 1 and 2. Blesses his creation. If you don't keep the commands, what do you get? Curses, yeah. And so, just like Genesis 3, sin and curse, okay? So now, God gives them this set of commands. That's what the Ten Commandments, what Deuteronomy, the list of laws are going to be about, okay? Is Israel obeying God as his nation. Now here, as we just wrap up here, here's the problem with that. That God is going to be equally faithful to what he says. He's going to be true to what he has promised, whether they obey or whether they disobey. So meaning if they obey, he will bring about the blessings. And we do see that when Israel obeys. But when they disobey, he will bring about the curses, ultimately kicking them out of the land. Okay? What's going to be the problem here that's tied to God's faithfulness? Yeah.
Even when they disobeyed and broke his covenant, he still blessed them because he sent Jesus?
Well, yes, ultimately that's true, but I'm saying here, why is it a problem that God follows through on what he says? For us as sinners, it's not a problem for God, but yeah.
Because if we aren't saved, then we'll get sent to hell. Right,
that God follows through on his statements about judgment as well as his statements about blessing and salvation. So is Israel going to consistently obey? No. And so their future, as we'll see, and we'll get to this another time, their future is going to be curses. Now that's going to create a huge problem because it's supposed to be through them that the whole nations of the world are supposed to be blessed, but they're not able to do it, right? So that's another reason why we need Christ.